And we currently work with over 50 NHS trusts, both providers and commissioners. So in terms of Microsoft, we work very closely with the Microsoft Health team, and very much particularly with Zuzana Loop, who's on the call now. She's the data and AI business lead for the NHS. And Zuzana, I'd just like to pass over to you first to say a few words.
Thank you, Taryn. Will do. So hello, everybody. As Taryn said, my name is Zuzana Loop, and I'm the Data and AI Public Sector Lead for a part of our business, supporting our organizations through the data project. So some of you may know me, and some of you may have been working with some of my colleagues as well. And just to say a few words, I think data is high on everyone's agenda these days, and more than ever, with the National Data Strategy released by the government just yesterday. And over the last 3 to 4 years, Cloud has been working really closely with the Microsoft teams, providing workshops around Power BI best practices and really sharing how other NHS trusts are using Power BI to improve operational performance. And working with the NHS, I think Cloud has really developed solutions meeting very specific requirements, such as the SPC Chart solution we'll hear about today. And we really want to make sure that the focus of this webinar is on you and the sharing of the best practices. So just before I pass it over to the team, I'd like to call out some of the work that Cloud2 has done, such as reducing waiting lists for Rotherham NHS Trust, developing COVID-19 dashboards for Liverpool CCG in just 2 days. And another one is, for example, a review and an improving the accuracy and visualization of out-of-hospital cell dashboards at Merseycare. And really just a massive thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your day to join us. I really hope you enjoyed the session, that you find it valuable, and I look forward to connecting with you after the call. I'm sure we'll be exchanging contact details, so please feel free to get in touch.
Great stuff. Thanks, Susanna. So we were introduced by Microsoft. I'll just take the screen share off for a moment. We were introduced by Microsoft to East London Foundation Trust with a couple of other partners back in July 2018, so over 2 years ago initially, to start to see which partner might be the best fit to help build some specific SPC functionality in Power BI. And yes, obviously we were very happy to be selected. ELF have been a really good customer to work with. I think the thing that we probably like the most is the fact that they're so focused on the outcomes that they can achieve around quality improvement using SPC, not just the technology itself. And I think that's the thing that probably impresses us the most. So we're looking forward to Dr. Amar Shah, Chief Quality Officer at East London Foundation Trust, and Farid Alam, the Strategic Lead for Information Analytics, who will then do the demo of the SPC work that's been built. Just before that, obviously ELF will be sharing their experiences as early adopters of SPC, but we will be assuming for the audience a level of prior knowledge on SPC, as we won't have the chance in this session to be getting into the details of SPC rules and calculations, etc. If you do have any questions, do just add them into the chat, even if they are of a technical nature. If we can't get to them today because of time, our team can pick those up and deal with those as team whatsoever. Okay, just a final note, if anybody's not on mute, if you're speaking, obviously you don't need to be on mute, but if everybody else, if you can just put yourselves on mute if you're not already on, that would be great. And now over to you, Amar.
Thank you, Taryn. Welcome, everyone, and thanks very much for the invitation to join with you, Taryn and Susanna, for the webinar this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to it myself. I'm Amar, I'm Chief Quality Officer at East London Foundation Trust, and just a little introduction from me about why this is so important. Obviously, statistical process control, for me, forms part of our approach, strategic approach to improvement. It goes hand in hand with applying a systematic method to solve our complex problems. And so this is why it's so important for us when, nearly 10 years ago now, when we had a number of sentinel events, we realized we needed to find a different approach to shift the power closer to our front lines, to give people the tools they need to be able to understand quality and safety and be able to improve it using the changes that come and the ideas that come directly from their patients and their staff at the front line. So we began in 2012 to start conversations with our board about what would it mean for us to really become improvement focused and to apply a systematic approach to quality improvement across the organization. In fact, while we were having those conversations, one of the first things we did was to change the board reporting. I took an 80-page report that was full of quarterly data in tables and just turned some of the key data in there into run charts, really simple data over time, just using a median to help us start to understand variation. And automatically that led to a much richer conversation at the board. It was clearer now which things we didn't need to pay attention to because they were largely in control, and which things we did need to pay attention to. And that was the beginnings of this journey, even before we really understood control charts and all the rules and the technical aspects of utilizing control charts like we're going to show you today. Obviously, when you apply quality improvement at scale, as we've been doing now for 6 to 7 years at Elft, it comes with it. Part of that approach is about measurement. So we have 350 teams, all of whom now are measuring in a very different way than they used to, with the measurement being owned much closer to the point of care. That's brought with it a hunger for data that we probably didn't anticipate 8 or 9 years ago when we began this work. And in fact, one of my learnings really about doing this work at scale has been, I wish we could have done this sort of thing 8 years ago, because we're now having to play catch up. Lots of teams having to manually create control charts. All our board reporting is all done manually. And that's really why this sort of tool that we're going to show you today could have such a big impact, because it draws on the data we already have in our systems and allows teams to see it very quickly to help understand variation. And obviously we've learned along the way that, we have to apply rigor to this work. If we're going to help use these tools to make better decisions, because I think that's what it does, being able to view data over time using control charts, as we're going to show you today, helps us make better decisions, better management decisions. We have to apply rigor to that. So we teach people at Elft how to create control charts and how to interpret them using systematic rules. And we produce the control charts along recognized international rules that the International Institute for Healthcare Improvement applies globally for healthcare improvement. So what we're going to show you today is best practice. It utilizes the rules that have been set out by the IHI and are being used across the world for healthcare improvement application of statistical process control. So I hope that gives you a bit of background about why we undertook this work with Cloud2 as our partners to build an enterprise level system that could apply statistical process control from our internal data. And I'm going to hand over now to Forrad, who can show us a little bit about what we've created with Cloud2.
Great, thanks a lot. Taryn, if you don't mind sharing the one page up.
Sure.
Hi everyone, so while Taryn's doing that, I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Forrad Alam. I'm the Strategic Lead for Information Analytics at East London Foundation Trust. And I joined the Trust about 6 years ago when we started our improvement journey. My role is primarily around supporting the data strategy, so the data over time strategy, and ensuring best practices adhered to when it comes to SPC. So over the course of the next 20 minutes, I'll be giving you an overview of our journey so far, the challenges we faced, where we got to at the moment, and some of the things we have in the pipeline. So for those of you who've created SPC before, you know there's various different tools out there in the market. So you've got standard Excel add-ins such as QI charts and QI macros, which allow you to create SPC charts on Excel data, but on ad hoc analysis. It's just you got your data set, you create your chart. It's very manual and it requires some sort of understanding of how to use these Excel add-ins. So in our trust, we use those two add-ins. We also use Live QI, which is an online project management tool for quality improvement projects, and they've got really handy SPC functionality. We also created, so hard-coded in the formulas behind the SPC charts using SQL and created charts on reporting services. But that also came with a lot of challenges when it came to creating SPC charts at scale. So other than the element of having to create them manually, it was also very difficult to fix baselines, recalculate limits. Our solution on reporting services used to be based on off a table in the SQL Server. So every single time you had to fix a baseline or recalculate a limit, you had to go in there manually, update the table, and then it would be reflected on the chart. So it needed some sort of developer expertise, which works, but it does put a funnel in your work, and you have to have very specific skill sets in order to create the SPC charts. And one of our models was to, as Amar mentioned, was to upskill our staff on how to create, understand, and interpret SPC charts. So they were asking to be able to look at their data as SPC charts, and we couldn't really empower them to do so. So when it came to our reporting services solution, we could only provide SPC chart at trust-wide level. But when it came to directorate, which is basically the geographical areas we cover, or the ward level, we couldn't do so because it was too many charts for us to manually maintain. If you think about it, one measure, if we've got 350 teams, when you look at that one measure across the 350 different teams, that's 350 different SPC charts. So you can already see as you go to 10 measures, 100 measures, it gets basically, it's an impossible task to do manually. And that's why when we went to Power BI, we were scoping up what potential SPC tools are out there in the market that we can use to help us really with our enterprise use of SPC. And there's quite a few, there are a few out there in the Microsoft Marketplace, but they all came with different limitations. So we were looking for a really easy, user-friendly solution that you don't have to be a developer to be able to use. You just need some basic training in Power BI, and you'll be able to interact with the chart and do all the relevant changes. And that's when we were clear that we needed to develop a solution ourselves, and we partnered up with Cloud2 that provided that helped us create a really user-friendly solution, taking all the learning from our experience of using all these different tools, from Excel add-ins to LiveQI to the SQL solution. Now, the solution I'm going to demo to you in a few minutes, it will really change the way in which we interact with SPC charts in the trust. So we've created custom visuals for all the 10 different types of charts that are regularly used. So from a run chart to all 9 different control chart types. And it's got a really user-friendly interface that helps, that allows you to fix baselines, recalculate limits, and add annotations really easily. So that's one thing I know a lot of organizations have struggled with. We've struggled with a lot is adding the narrative behind the data. The chart will only tell you what the data is doing, but you need to be able to add the narrative of what's actually happening in our local services or teams. And the ability to highlight the rules, so either non-random variation in run charts or special cause variation in control charts. There are some tools out there that do it for you, but most of the Excel add-ins you have to do yourself. And the really, as I do the demo, you'd see some of the advantages that come out of it. It's really easy to create SPC charts now, really user-friendly, and this ability, this one area which we have always struggled with, which is that scalability, being able to provide SPC charts at all hierarchies of the trust. So we can now provide an SPC chart from trust-wide to directorate to ward level on however many measures we want. There's no limitations there in terms of having to have a developer manually do all the relevant changes. You can do it within the visual itself. So that's a bit of a background. If I just go into showing you the tool now. So Tan, if you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen.
Sure.
Sorry, one sec. So you should all be able to see my Power BI desktop software now. So I'm going to first show you how easy it is to create the SPC charts within the tools, and then I'm going to show you the hierarchical element I was talking about. So you'll notice that we've got the visuals on the right here. These are all the custom visuals. We've got all 10 different types. If you hover over them, it tells you what the chart type is. So we've got C chart, So you can do all the different types. So run chart, C, U prime. So you can even do the more advanced prime charts. You got the TNGs and then XMR and XBAR-S. So all you need to do is click on the visual. I'm just going to make this as big as I can so you can clearly see. And if I go to so all the data I'm going to be using in this demo is dummy data. So if I just choose date, and this example is based off number of incidents. Within 2 clicks, I was able to create an SPC chart, which is massive when you're comparing it to tools like the Excel add-ins, which you have to do manually. And you can see you don't need to be comfortable in development and coding. You can just simply give a few instructions and create an SPC chart yourself. This is a C chart, so all of these are based off the formulas, industry standard formulas on creating the Schuhart chart. So these are all sigma limits with the relevant calculations. And you notice here, it's worked out the center line from the first point all the way to the last point. So one of the standard things you do when you create an SPC chart is you fix your baseline. So I'm going to show you now a few steps on how you can navigate around the chart and make the relevant steps that you need to. You'll see if you hover over any data point in the tooltip, you've got the limits and then the center line value. So all I need to do if I want to fix a baseline, I just click on it and it brings up this wizard, which gives you a set of functions or a set of steps you can take. So I'm just going to mark a baseline here. And you notice the center line has shifted upwards as you would expect because we've fixed the baseline. And it's highlighted these certain data points in red. So what the tool will do automatically for you is highlight the rules. So if I hover over them, you can see here, it says rule 4, 3 sigma violation. So this data point is outside the lower control limit. That's why it's highlighted that. If I hover over this data point, it would say rule 1, so shift 8 or more consecutive points below the center line. So these are standard rules. So we in ELF to use IHI's rules for special causes, which is five rules, but I know it varies across organizations. But that we just use the standard. Early on in our strategy, we decided to use the standard model from IHI. You'll notice that the whole chart has highlighted in red. The reason this is another functionality you can turn on and off, which when the latest data point sees a special cause, it highlights the chart in red for you. And that is the use case for that is when you have multiple charts on a page. So in QI, it's very common to have small multiples. So when you see a special cause and it highlights in red, it really focuses your attention on where you need to just focus your attention. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add an annotation. So on this point, if I say here, this is all baseline up until here, and then here is when we started testing. Click on the data point. Under annotation, I'm going to say testing began. Submit annotation. Now, can you see there's a little exclamation mark that appears at the top? That just says there's an annotation on there. You can change it to any character you want under chart settings. And if I hover over it, you can now see it says annotations, testing began. Now, although this is a small point, this is a really big development for us because we've not been able to add narratives on our SPC charts within the charts itself. We've always had to have either reports or text alongside the SPC chart to provide the narrative. So it's anyone who comes into our reports and sees this chart, they'll be able to see the narrative behind it by just hovering over it. Now if I want to recalculate, so now that we've got a shift here or 8 or more points, if I want to recalculate the center line and the limit, all I do is click on the data point and I've got 2 options here. I could either start a shift and then specify where I want to end the shift calculation, or I could do shift 8 points. For the purpose of the demo, I'm just going to do shift 8 points. And there you go. It's recalculate the limits and the center line and shift it. And it did that within 2 clicks. That's one element that we've been not struggling with in terms of being able to do it, but being able to do it at speed is something that is really difficult. In our previous solution, we had to go into a SQL table, say the start date of the new shift, the end date, and then run the script, and it would do the calculation and reflect on reporting services. So it's a massive change for us. And now you can see here, it's so user-friendly. Those people, those of our staff who are comfortable with SPC can even do this themselves. one other great thing you can do. So you've got capability to change the chart settings however way you would like. So if I want to change the x-axis format, so I'm just going to change the date for this example. So you got the standard functionality you'd expect for any of the charts. But another cool thing is this element. You can add a target line. So if I just turn it on and I add a target of say 25. There you go. You can add a target and change the color. So again, really nice small features that make a big difference. You notice on the top right, you've got this thing called desired, this arrow. So it's common in SPC where you add a desired direction of travel to say which way is good. So in this case, number of incidents we've set as downwards is good. So you can see here it's automatically spotted. We've seen a shift downwards. Center line has reduced, so that's why it's highlighted in green. If the shift was upwards, then it would turn red. And you also have the ability to ghost. So those of you who are familiar with creating SPC charts, you know that this it's common practice to ghost data points when you're clear you've done investigating and you know what caused it, and you don't want to recalculate, you just want to add a narrative. So all you do is click on ghost point, and you can see it's excluded it from the calculations, but it still appears here. So really, really handy features, and you can see how quick the tool is to respond. I'm just going to show one more example of a different type of chart before I show the hierarchy ones. So I'll do a P chart, which will have the stair-step limits. So I'll go to P chart. So this data example is based off DNAs. So you'll see here I've chosen the numerator, denominator, and there you go again. Within a few seconds, it's created the P chart with the stair-step limits. I need to fix my baseline, so I'm just going to fix it to say this data point here. So mark baseline. Picked up special causes. If I hover over it, you'll see here it's a shift as well as a 3 sigma violation. So it makes it really easy for you to know what's going on. I'm just going to shift to 8 points here, and then there's another shift upwards here. So shift 8 points. There you go. I've just been able to create a P chart, fix the baseline, and add 3 phases within a space of a few clicks, which normally, even when you're comfortable with QR charts in Excel, will take a few minute or two. So you can see the user-friendly nature of the tool. So that's an overview of the how to actually create the SPC charts and navigate around them. I just want to show you now the really big advantage of this tool and how it's going to change the way in which we do reporting within the trust. So this is a report just on safety. Again, it is all dummy data, but you can see here we've got a filter for director and a filter for ward. And then there's 4 measures here on safety. So right now it's selected at trust-wide. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix the baseline just for the purposes of the demo. I'm going to do here. You'll notice that because it's small, it's telling you to do an edit mode. So I'm just going to go on edit mode. Fix the baseline here. So you got 2 options. You got the standard baseline option that I did, but you got mark default baseline. So this is mainly for when you've got measures that have hierarchy within it. So when you're setting the baseline here, you're saying every single filtering option should have the same baseline. So I'm just going to do mark default baseline, and you can see here you've got it's highlighted that there's a special cause here. That's why it's appeared in red. Now if I go back, so when this data refreshes every month, you can see here I've got 4 charts, but I know immediately I need to focus my attention here. And then if I look at it, I see there's a data point here. So there's a 3 sigma violation here. So you may investigate and add annotation here. I'm just going to recalculate here. I know there's not a special cause here, but it's just for the purpose of the demo, I'm just going to do shift 8 points here just to show you. So we've got a recalculation here. We did this. So this is a trust-wide view, remember, and I've got a recalculation here. Now, if I choose, say, a different one, so say Bedfordshire, can you see the recalculation has not come through, but the default baseline has come through, so it's set the baseline already for this chart, and it's highlighting these data points in red, so it's seen a shift. So 8 or more points above the center line. So all I do now is, if I go into edit mode, click this data point and do a shift 8 points, go back. So now I can see in this measure for Bedfordshire, I've got a recalculate. So we've seen a shift upwards. But if I were to go back now to the trust-wide view, you'll see it's specific to the trust-wide view. So now we can provide SPC charts for any measure for all the different hierarchies there, which is going to transform the way in which we interact with data over time within the trust, because now wards can actually see their data as SPC charts and make the relevant changes from the relevant phase shifts, the relevant annotations, specifically to their data. And then they can take screenshots, or they can export the charts to put into whatever reports they need to. And this is one element that we've been really struggling with. It's been really difficult, and I think this tool is good. The fact that it's so easy to do within this tool is going to revitalize the way in which we interact with SPC charts across the trust. So that's a quick overview of the demo. Just to give you a brief overview of what we're planning next. So now that we've been able to cover, develop functionality to create the SPC charts and then produce it at for all hierarchies, the next thing we're exploring now is the ability to send notifications out of the report. So if you see a special cause, if a special cause happens within a chart or a specific measure and a specific filtering combination, maybe a directorate, then the system sends a notification to a specified user to tell them that a special cause has just been seen here, which will then allow, which then they can investigate. And I think this is an area that, as much as we want to, we've never explored because it was just not feasible or not possible within the platforms that we use. And I think that's good. That's the next layer up when you're thinking about using SPC at enterprise level. It's around how do you use it to predict or quickly react to the changes and the special cause variation that's happening within the system. So that's the end of the demo. I'll hand back over to Taryn now, and I think we're going to have a section for Q&A where you can ask any questions about the demo or anything that we've covered so far. Over to you, Taryn.
Thanks, Farid. That was excellent. Thank you very much for that. So at this point, if people want to ask any questions, please do that in the chat, and we'll look to shout some of those out. I think there's probably a few already starting to come in. Farid, if you just hold on a second, and we'll look to shout those out.
Taryn, a couple of people are asking about the commercials and the cost of the SPC charts. Is it worth just going over that quickly now?
Yeah, I can just get that out of the way, shall we? If that's a question, then we'll get back to any of the other more kind of product focused ones. I'll just share my screen quickly just to answer that question, so we've got it out of the way. So again, just another reminder that these are the key challenges and solutions and the benefits that we've just demonstrated. In terms of the commercials, we've got an offer for those attending the webinar today, and effectively what we've done is just split up the offer so that for some organizations who may have an interest in just some of the custom visuals, there's a a standard version of the offer, which has a set of cost and an annual cost. And then there's a premium version, which has all the 10 visuals at a separate price. And I guess finally, we've got a 5% discount for orders received by the middle of October. So that's basically it, and we'll send that out to all the attendees anyway, along with a feedback form afterwards. You're welcome to either respond to that feedback form or put a message in the chat if you'd like to get a follow-up conversation or a quotation. Yeah, somebody asked, does that cost cover the whole organisation? Yes, it's for a trust-wide license.
And Tan, I'm seeing a question here about the customization ability of the chart. So I didn't show you, but under chart settings, you've got full flexibility to change the color of any of the data points, any of the special causes. So you've seen on the demo, you highlight the special causes in red, but you can change it to any color that you'd want. You can also change the color of the limits. So it's very, very flexible and allows you to change it according to your standards of showing SPC charts within your organization. So we've just set here at our standards and how we view SPC charts within our organization, but that flexibility is all there.
Sure. One of the questions from Anthony Schnauer, it says, do users need to use Power BI Desktop, as most of our users use the web service? So we didn't show the web service, but what we showed is the desktop tool where generally these reports would be created and then published out to the web service for users to view and access reports. The editing capability for it is obviously and the ability to customize those SPC charts is all in the desktop tool, I take it.
Yeah, so it depends on what rights you have on the report. So if you've got editing rights on the report within the service, you can do interact with the charts on the service. So when you click on the data point and it brings up that toolbox to fix baselines, recalculate limits, all of that, you can do that within the service itself. It's just you go to edit mode and then interact with the data and make the relevant changes that you want. Because when we were developing the solution, we were conscious that not everyone's going to have those people who need to make the relevant changes to the chart might not be the ones who actually have access to the PBX file and created the report. So all that customization ability and interaction with the chart is available on the web service.
Okay, another question here for us. Can you visualize the annotations on the visual, or are they just in tooltips? So
right now they're at the tool in the tooltips. One I mentioned, so phase 3, which is around the alerts and everything. It's all we're also going to be exploring the ability to add annotations at the bottom underneath the data point that it relates to, and as a toggle, so you can turn it on and off. So it's not within this phase, but it's something that we're working on, because especially for those users who would print out the SPC chart for a report, you can't. It's important to be able to include the annotations in there, rather than it just being locked into the tooltip.
Okay, and a different question. Sorry, I'm going to keep firing them out. There's quite a few in here. So,
yeah, no, it's all good. Fire them away.
Yeah. If you might need to get your glass of water for it, or are you going to be all right for a couple more minutes?
I'm prepared.
Okay, clearly. So Stuart Grayson's asking, can you have time units on the y-axis? Apparently this is an issue with their current provider.
Yeah, so I think it's just got to do with the way in which you format the data within the Power BI table and data model. But all it does is it pulls through your columns of data into the custom visual, and then it shows it. So as long as it's date ordered, it's time ordered on the x-axis, there's no issue with it.
Okay. Let me see. So there's a question here from Simon Brown, and I'm not sure about this. If we might need to revert to somebody else in the team for this, but I'll ask the question anyway. Where does the tool write the narrative and baseline changes to?
So I think that's going to be one for the tech guys on the call from Cloud 2 here. Yeah. But from my limited knowledge of the tech element. It stores it within the custom visual itself, but it might be something that I don't know if Aslam or Dan are on the call that they can answer.
Yeah, thanks, Farid. I don't mind jumping in on that one. So one of the developers here at Cloud2 has done some of the work on the SPC visuals. You're correct. All the annotations, shift patterns, and all the sort of customizations you make to the chart are stored within the visual themselves. So this behind the scenes are stored within the visual settings. So it's a hidden page of settings where we use to store that data. So they all stay with the chart.
And one of the two options you have on the chart is when you click on the data point, you've got the export function, which allows you to export all the underlying data. So I know often when you're creating SPC charts on different platforms or different software, you want to just export the data into an Excel file and do your manual analysis if should you require it. So you can also do that with this tool. Just extract all the information, all the data, the calculation, limit calculations, and and create it within Excel yourself.
Okay, yeah. And I don't know if we answered this with the other date question for it, but another perhaps related one from Sean Lomax. Can you add a date hierarchy to the chart, for example, so you can clearly see months along with weeks?
So are you talking about the x-axis or a filter? If it's a
yeah, it was the y-axis I was talking about.
Oh, the y-axis. Yeah, so with all of the formatting of the y-axis or the x-axis, I think it's all just down to your data, how you formatted it within your data model, because all you're doing is you're just pulling across the data from the columns into the visual itself, and then it just reflects that.
Sure. And an interesting question, I think, from Anna Burhouse, which is perhaps not so technical. It's asking, how is this then linked up into board reports? I'm assuming there's a dashboard function.
Yeah, so if you imagine what we showed is the creation of the visual itself. What you would then do is you'd have an actual report where you'd embed the visuals within it. So as you would with any Power BI report, you've got the standard Power BI visuals like tree map, bar chart, all of that. You'd also have the SPC chart. So one of the things that we're working on now is creating our Power BI board report, which includes SPC visuals in there and relevant to the measures that the board look at. So it's just up to you now. It's just you use these SPC visuals as building blocks for your report, just as you would with any other visual within Power BI.
Thanks for it. And I think there's one here that I might be able to answer. So Simon Brown is asking, does it work for both on-premise and hosted? And I think the answer to that is yes. And then Jonathan Ood is asking, it might be another one for me. Does the SPC functionality come with Power BI, or is it an add-in? So these are custom visuals, so they're add-ins to Power BI. So they're not standard, they're not available as standard with the product itself from Microsoft. Some nice comments. So I see that from Anna Smith. Great. This is great, as previously thought R was the only way to get control charts in Power BI. So thank you for that, Anna.
Yeah, and I think it's worth highlighting some of the tools that are out there. They do have the ability to create SPC charts, but then when you actually create it and put it into the report, it doesn't really give you much interactive capability. So you can't really interact with the chart. It's a static image. Whereas with these, one of the key things that we needed for us was creating a tool that anyone who understands SPC can really play with and make the relevant changes. So as Amar mentioned, we've got a huge capability plan where we upskill staff on understanding SPC and interacting with SPC charts. So we don't want to keep the capability of recalculating limits, setting baselines just within the informatics department or the developers. We want to empower our staff and our champions, our SPC champions or our data champions across the organization to be able to make these changes themselves.
Absolutely. Thanks, Roy. Amar, I don't know if you're still on the call, but there was a question from Pete Best. I know you've replied in the thread, but there's so many other posts in there. And it's a very specific one, I think, which is very relevant, which is around compliance with NHS Improvement guidelines and rules. I don't know if you want to just talk through that, perhaps, because I think it could be a key question for others.
Obviously, there are a number of different rules that are used across different industries. What's been used most commonly across the world in healthcare is the set of rules that have been defined by the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, which is what we've gone with here. They are, in some respects, a little bit more complex than the NHSI rules, which tend to stick to just a single control chart, the XMR chart, which is useful for some types of data, but actually for other kinds of data, you really want more specificity, and other industries wouldn't just use a single control chart. So what we've developed here is a range of control charts to give people the opportunity to use the most appropriate chart for the type of data they're using. And if you look at the rules that NHSI have created, there's no requirement for anyone to be compliant with it. It's not really an issue of compliance. It's a question about what's going to help us make better decisions. And for me, using the most appropriate chart for the type of data is more important, because that does change the calculations of the limits. And so if you've got inappropriate limits, you're potentially going to be making inappropriate decisions. That's why I think it's really important that we have the range of control charts that we're making available here, so that you can choose the most appropriate one. And the rules around shifts and trends are exactly the same between NHS Improvement and the IHI. If you look at the Making Data Count guide, they're completely consistent.
Thanks, Hammer. That's hopefully answered that question for Pete and others. Just looking at the rest of the question list. So there's a question about, is there a free trial? No, there isn't. All right. Chris Munyasa from Microsoft. Hi, Chris. Will the charts be available on the Power BI marketplace? Yes, they will. We're just going through that process now. We've gone through the kind of final sign-offs and getting these submissions in for that. So that's in play, and we're expecting that submission in the next 24 to 48 hours. A couple more, I think, then we may need to oh, Anna's come back with another question. We may just, so I'm conscious of time, but let's work through that one. So thanks for the answer there, Anna. Sorry, thanking us for the answer. And you're wondering if the link to the board report could be more dynamic and show real-time progress against the NHSI guidelines. Do you want to just come off mute and just talk through that a little bit, just to make sure we understand what you mean?
Thanks, everyone. I'm really impressed, and it's lovely to see your work. I guess I was just interested. I absolutely get that you could export these charts into a board report, but I guess one of the things I'm interested in is, how do we make the board report dynamic and real time? So I just wondered whether there's any future kind of thoughts about that, really.
So just on the export element, in terms of our reports and in terms of our strategy, data visualization strategy going forward, it's to move away from as many manually created PowerPoint reports and embed them within Power BI, because the power of using Power BI comes with the interactive element of actually going in within Power BI service or Power BI app and interacting with the data and hovering with it. So the intention would be to create a board report that's based on Power BI. It's a Power BI report itself, and you'd be able to navigate and hover and interact with the data itself. And I guess the question about the frequency is just dependent on your data source and how frequently you get. If you've got live data available, then the charts will automatically refresh, and then you'd be able to respond appropriately. Anything else to add in terms of board, our board report?
No, I mean, our board report is public, so if people are interested in just having a look at how we use SPC charts, you'd be very, very happy to take a look and see for yourself how we do that. Ultimately, they're manually produced at the moment, and this sort of tool would help us to do that all in an automated way, and people could access and see the data real time rather than just every 2 months at a board meeting.
Okay, and just continuing on that thread on board assurance and NHSI. Thank you to Samantha Riley for the comments there on that topic as well. So there's a question. Can you please share a link to the reports, please? From Russell Danby. Okay, there's a link from, it's not right there, that's probably answering that question. Okay, I think we're close to the end time. We've got a couple more questions. I don't know if anybody else wants to shout any of them out for it that you've seen that you want to pick up on.
Happy to answer any more that you've seen.
Somebody did ask, will we be publishing written answers to these questions? I think what we will have is a recording of this session, and we'll probably then end up with a series of maybe some FAQs and other things that we end up with. But we will be sharing the full recording of this session for sure. And if there's specific questions that we've missed, we'll be looking to respond individually to those people probably, and pick those up that way. And if they're of interest to us, then we'll share them as well. Simon Brown had another question. Can we set baselines from historic periods not displayed in the current reporting range?
So you'd be only able to set baseline on the actual data set that you've imported into the visual. So the start and end date. The first data point and your last data point is your window of fixing your baseline. I guess the question there is, if you go back to best practice, how many data points you need for baseline and how many data points you need on SPC chart? Because it comes to a point where having too many data points on there doesn't make it viable. So you'd cut off a previous, you might cut off for years to accommodate for a new year. But yeah, it's just all the interactive elements and the fixing of baselines, recalculate limits is all based on the data you input within the visual itself. I'm just putting in a few guidance, 3 links in the chat. One around the healthcare data guide, which is for those of you who are familiar with it, it's like the Bible of SPC, and it's got a whole lot of examples and formulas behind it. I know we didn't get into much of the theory today, but a lot of that can be found in there. A link to our microsite page where you've got a whole lot of information around SPC, as well as a link to NHSI's make a data account guide, which you'll see once you it supports what we're showing here in terms of the rules.
Yep. Okay. So let's take a final couple of questions. I think Martin Black, can you show or hide annotation text as default on the chart, or plans to develop this? I think you may have touched on this earlier.
Yeah, so right now it's within the tooltip, but one of the next stages of development is to be able to add it beneath the x-axis, so you can actually see the annotations. And this is mainly for when you print out the SPC charts, but that's a development that's coming.
And then Gordon Bethany, would be really good to have a look at the format of the data behind the SPCs, just to make sure it would work as well in our trust. Thanks. And so oh, sorry, Bethany, Gordon, got that wrong around. It's been a long day. Bethany, so if anybody wants to have a more kind of one-to-one conversation and talk about your data set or have a follow-up to this, more than happy to pick that up. We'll come back to you on that if that's okay. Oh, and Dimitris, I think I missed this earlier, so let's have another go at that. In your example C chart, I suspect this is going to border on one of the technical questions, but in your example C chart, the target you added was in this case outside the lower limit of the chart, which would suggest that the process is not configured to hit that target. Is the visual able to feed that back to the user? i.e., you need to change the process if you wish to hit that target.
So not at the moment. Yeah, I purposely did it outside the limits because that's one of the advantages of using SPC. When you set targets, it can tell you is your current system able to reach that target, or does significant changes need to be made to the process or to the system in order to achieve that. When it comes to messaging, right now the messaging, the the visual won't provide messaging. That's something we're exploring in the later stage, which I alluded to already. But most of that narrative has to come. It depends on how you design the report. So you might have an SPC chart there, and you might have include narratives yourself. But right now, the visual doesn't pop messages like that yet.
Yeah, so I mean, just on that and any other feedback around other potential innovation items or improvements to the product. I mean, today really is the official launch of this SPC custom visual in Power BI. This is effectively a version 1. We know it's working. It's gone through extensive testing over a kind of an elongated period, as you know, you guys at East London Foundation Trust have been testing it and trialing it and piloting it. Clearly, we do plan to have innovations, but I think, you know, depending on the response out there, if we get a number of trusts wanting to adopt it, then I think we could start to move to a model where all of those trusts are feeding into the innovation ideas for the product, and those go into a pot which can then prioritize based on all the usual factors such as, you know, effort required, etc., etc. Okay, I think that's mostly everything. For those that have enjoyed the session, we do have a series we're planning of best practice webinars, and the next one is around boardroom reporting for another solution we've developed. And in this session, which is next Thursday, we'll have the Chief Exec at Barnsley Hospital and the Chief Operating Officer from Chelsea and Westminster presenting with our very own Tom Ridgway, formerly at Rotherham Foundation Trust, on benchmarking and best practices around using that data for the NHS. So if you are interested, feel free to, I'll put the link in the chat. Feel free to register if appropriate. And thank you all so much for attending, and obviously a huge thank you to our speakers, firstly Susanna for coming to the meeting, and also obviously Farid Alam and Dr. Amar Shah. Thank you all very much for attending, taking time out of your extended lunch, late lunch, early afternoon to join us today. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Yes. Bye.
Thank you.